Thank you for coming. This session is primarily focused on buildings and energy. We are going to take a look at both kind of more one-off kinds of energy efficiency measures, kind of more incremental changes that you can make for businesses, even for homes as well. We're going to talk about homes a bit as well as sort of looking at energy from a more integrated approach, as well as a truly holistic approach, where we're going all the way to zero net energy and net positive buildings as well. So that's true for the entire track. This first session is focused a little bit more on retrofits, existing buildings, and trying to integrate more than one solution at a time. You know, a lot of times in the past, we didn't have a lot of choice. You could go solar or you could do efficiency. It's kind of it. Do some LEDs, which were kind of a little sketchy, and maybe some more efficient HVAC unit or something like that. So we're really blessed and fortunate with our panelists today, who bring a lot of expertise, a lot of competency, a lot of experience, and a lot of passion to the work. So we're hoping that and the range of topics that we have, that we're hoping that this will really appeal to whatever your interests are, whether it's homes or buildings or commercial spaces, larger community solutions as well, which we're going to talk more about, especially in the second session, again, session B, that starts at 3. This topic is kind of an ambitious one. So the notion of electrification of everything, what does that even mean? Well, our panelists will help answer that. But the gist is that we're getting into this mode of realizing that it's not just about renewables in and of itself that we're looking at. It's also shifting to EVs, electric vehicles, and powering those with clean energy as well as fuel switching. So that includes things like switching out hot water heaters and furnaces with heat pumps, so that they're all electric units as well. So there's some implications with that, though. Some really good ones, actually, it turns out. It's a lot of hard work. It's complicated, which you guys will address for sure. But there's a lot of potential in the market. And so I just kind of back up one quick second, and then we'll let our panelists speak. Is to anyone familiar with the recent IPCC report that just came out? Yeah, it's a little concerning, right? Basically, the notion is that we have, in terms of our carbon budget, we have about 10 to 12 years of current emissions until we reach a greenhouse gas threshold where we're likely to get to 1.5 degrees Celsius temperature increase, global increase, which triggers all kinds of environmental and human problems in the process. So we've got a big lift ahead of us, for sure. However, the good news is that as fast and as furious as the problem is coming, we have solutions that are coming almost as fast and furious, which we'll be talking about. And they're both technological and non-technological, or more social in nature, I would say. So that's everything like from solar to distributed energy resources, and a whole range of other solutions that help us electrify everything with clean energy. Let's see what else I want to say about that. I also wanted to say quickly acknowledge that Marin and much of the Bay Area is not starting from scratch. We've got a tremendous foundation and a lot of hard work that's been done over the years. It's sort of an amazing amount of smart people and smart solutions that have been out there, and we'll hear about those. In Marin, we've got about 45 megawatts of residential and commercial solar already installed. There's about 4.5 megawatts of feed-in tariff solar through Marin Clean Energy. And of course, MCE's power mix is about 61% renewable energy right now, and a higher percentage of that is greenhouse gas free as well. Unfortunately, we don't have anyone from MCE today, although in this panel and the next there'll be lots of reference to the work that MCE is doing for sure. And they're also here in attendance, so hopefully we can, right, okay. One thing I also want to introduce you guys to is a concept of the economic potential that's in front of us. As Emery Levinson said, we're challenged by insurmountable opportunities. In this sense, if we look at all this fuel switching and EV charging and the need for more renewables just to get us to 100% clean energy, we're looking at hundreds of megawatts in Marin alone of additional capacity that's needed by 2030. Not 50, not 100, but hundreds, probably around 400 to 600 megawatts more capacity. There's no way we're building that in Marin, that's for sure. However, the notion is that we can develop at least a fraction of it in Marin and direct some of that money into it, so there's a lot of economic development that happens here in the building level, in the community levels as well. So our sense of it is that we're really looking at an opportunity that's roughly equivalent to about 1 billion to maybe 1.5 billion of economic development. That's back of napkin rough, but that does not even really fully include storage, EV charging, and all the other related technologies and solutions that are out there. So it's a massive number, and we shouldn't just kind of go, oh, well, we'll let the CCAs take care of it. They have a critical role to play, but we have to be active, involved citizens and business owners and government leaders to help do what we can to make this also a really smart economic and social opportunity for us. And money does not all have to come from us either. It can be public-private partnerships. In Marin, there's probably about $400 million of investment in the retail solar space, both on homes and businesses, already that's been invested over the years. That's almost entirely out of homeowners, building owners' pockets. And it might have cost $400 million, but they're likely to recoup about 3 or 4 times that over the life of those systems. So it's a net huge benefit to them and to the economy. So that's just to provide a little bit of context. You guys will talk more about the regulations a little bit, SB 100, SB 700 around storage. Hopefully we'll weave some of that into your talks a little bit. Okay, then I'll say something about it.
Who wants those details?
Anyway, just SB 700 is retail storage, 3,000 megawatts of investment of incentives for retail behind the meter storage coming by, I think, 2030 or 2050. I'm not sure what the whole market, but the goal is to invest that amount. So it's a massive opportunity right there. Storage is great, but it's not entirely here yet either. Hopefully you guys will talk about that. And panel 2 will also talk more about where we are with storage. So without further ado, we're first going to have Alice Zanmiller, who's a sustainability manager at the County of Marin and the sustainability team. Awesome team of dedicated and very smart folks, really fighting a good fight for the entire county. We have next Ted Tiffany with Gutman Blaivowitz.
Gutman and
Blabowitz, like that, yeah. The biggest challenge of the session. And then Ann Edminster from Design Avenues Consultancy, who's a pioneer and does both research and development as well as kind of more practical consulting work, with actual, build projects. But you do a lot also on the kind of policy development side as well. So they'll each say a little bit more about their work when it's their time to come up, and then they're going to also give about a 10-minute presentation each. I will say this too, is that we will have time for discussions and breakouts. So that will be both small group and then large group. We probably have about 4 or 5 groups that we'll break into, with the idea that there's a lot of information and we want to help you guys understand, like, how does it apply to my context, my situation, rather than just have it be talking heads. So that was just to set a little bit of context about what we're thinking about with Drawdown Marin and what we need to do here in the county and probably really the whole state and beyond that. So without further ado, Alice, we'll bring you up and then I'll start get your slides there.
Awesome, thank you. So my name is Alice Zanmiller. I am a planner at the County of Marin, just up the hill here. Can I get a sense of who's in the room? How many of you are business owners or business people? Okay. And anyone from like government, nonprofit? Okay, cool. Just want to make sure that my talk is angled at the audience. Okay. So today I'm going to give an overview of the programs that the county currently has and helps facilitate to support businesses in Marin County to be as green as they would like, and both in the context of climate change, but also in the context of saving money and making the best economic choice for your businesses. Go next. So we have a lot of motivation for action here. obviously there's a lot to lose in Marin County. We're a county that's surrounded on 3 sides by water, a lot of low-lying communities, but also just a lot of really special places, really rich natural resources, communities, a really amazing agricultural history. So it's really been clear for a long time in Marin County that this is an important issue for our local government to address. We've had a climate action plan since 2005, which is really, really early for a lot of cities. Our most current climate action plan, pictured here, was adopted in 2015, and this includes ranges of strategies for the county to develop policies and programs to support greenhouse gas emission reductions across all sectors in Marin County. And we have a lot of really amazing partners in this work. So MCE was touched on. It's really enabled us to be innovative and really sort of aggressive about our pursuit of greenhouse gas emissions in the energy sector. So I'll show how our emissions have changed over time, but natural gas as a share of our energy emissions has actually grown 10% in the last 10 years, not because the actual therms, like our energy use is going down, but our electricity is getting so much cleaner that eventually we're only going to focus on natural gas emissions, and that's how it ties into the electrification. So MCE has really empowered the county to focus on this. We also have the Marin Climate and Energy Partnership. There are 11 cities and towns plus the county in Marin, and they're all really small, but great staff, and we have this partnership where we can sort of pull together our resources. We meet every month and we just talk about how we can use collective action to both provide more effective and efficient programming for businesses and residents in the county, but how to really sort of bundle our resources to make the most impact locally. Oh, so these got a little crazy looking. No, it's fine. I made the colors different so that it would be easy to just look at. So commercial emissions, or energy use emissions, as a portion of all of Marin County's emissions has actually been really pretty consistent over the last 10 years. So from 2005 to 2015, that's just saying it was 15% of our total emissions in 2005, and it's about 14% of our emissions in 2015. So it's obviously not the biggest portion. I think we can all guess what that is. It's transportation. So when we talk about what commercial emissions, we're talking about the energy use in non-residential sectors, so natural gas and electricity consumption in Marin County. And so some of that decrease probably comes from the advent of MCE and the decrease in the emissions and electricity used in businesses here, but it shows sort of this consistency of this being about 15% of our emissions every year. So to address that 15%, we have what we like to call our NASCAR slide here of all of the different programs and partners we have in working to address commercial energy emissions in Marin County. And in the next few slides, I'll sort of go over the programs that we have currently and some exciting things that are coming up. So the main mechanism that we have to do programs for businesses in Marin County to reduce energy use is the Marin County Energy Watch Partnership. This is funded by this really sort of long and winding road, but every time that one of you pays your PG&E bill, you pay a little portion every month to public purpose programming funds. And that gets filtered up to the California Public Utilities Commission, given to PG&E, who then has partnerships with local governments like Marin County, who gets to work with businesses in the county, use our sort of local experience to provide good service and really locally relevant programming. So Energy Watch staff, we can help coordinate audits and financing if people want to know how much energy their building uses, or how they could fund upgrades to their business, like if you want to change your lights to LED lights. We can help you sort of navigate the available rebates and incentives at lots of different levels, so from PG&E, from the county, from the state. We also help just connect business owners with professionals to complete projects. So we have, within the Energy Watch Partnership, some really great data analysis folks and people who can help do the actual assessments of your business. So really good resources that we can connect you to without having to go through a whole bid process or find someone on your own. And all of those services are free for people that come to the county, and we're here to help you. This is what the funds are for. So we have this video. I figured that instead of me talking about our successes, this is one of our most recent projects that's really exciting. Click on the Safari button. So this is Fairfax Market. Some of you may be familiar. And they just did this really great big project, and it's really inspiring to see how the program was able to connect resources for them and make a real change for their business.
Dennis Delano, and I am a grocer. I purchased Fairfax Market about 10 years ago. It needed lighting more than anything. The lighting was extremely neglected.
The county implements the commercial energy efficiency programs because part of our mission is to support our community, both our residents and our commercial businesses, and also protect the environment.
This program provides energy efficiency evaluation service that smaller businesses might not be otherwise able to provide themselves. So we can come out and do an audit and evaluation and provide information on what types of lights can be upgraded, how much money it's going to cost, and what the rebate's going to be.
It's been extremely good. It's been easy. It's helped answer a lot of questions that I had and put a lot of concerns to rest. The county and PG&E, it was like working with one group. It was extremely efficient and easy to do.
So the first thing businesses need to do to get involved is to just schedule a free no obligation audit. It was for Fairfax Market. We went in, did the audit, presented them the financial information on the project, and after a couple meetings, they decided that they liked the numbers, and all they had to do was say yes.
I would most definitely recommend this program to other businesses. If you were in the market for lighting, this may be the program for you.
Well, it's so heartening to hear about the success of this program because you design these programs and you start building these partners hoping that it's going to have an impact on the community because that's ultimately who we serve. And to hear that a business took us up on our offer of resources, that they were able to leverage all of the programs and the pieces that we have out there for them, and now they've got a beautiful looking store. It's wonderful to hear that it all came together in this way.
If you're a business owner in Marin and you're looking to participate in the program, you can visit us online at marinsustainability.org and follow the 4 business links.
Great. So like sort of jazzy music too. It's just really a feel-good story. So 2 things that I just want to point out about that project. One is lighting is obviously a big saver, and for a lot of businesses that's sort of like an easy, clear upgrade to do. But the Fairfax Market project also got to do some refrigeration work and upgrades that are really actually hard to finance, but we can help you bundle them. And then they also used what's called on-bill financing. So they actually paid out of pocket, but then get reimbursed, and are with the savings from their energy efficiency upgrades, they're actually just paying that project back incrementally over time. So their bill will stay the same as it was before the retrofit, but the difference in the energy saving costs is actually just going to pay back the project. So it's really good for businesses that are maybe low on capital or don't have a great way to finance it, and a lot of times those are really low interest rate loans. So just in the end here, I'll just pitch some programs that are coming up that you can keep your eye out for. So currently that on-bill financing really just is for projects that are $5,000 and above. So the Bay Area Regional Energy Network, which the county is a member of, will be providing sort of a gap program for small and medium businesses called Pay for Performance. So you'll be able to enroll, there'll be technical assistance, and it'll sort of provide the same easy access, but for smaller projects. And then MCE is also currently developing a customer-facing online platform that will help connect you to like upgrade people. And so that's also coming soon. And then the final pitch is for the Green Business Program. Many of you are probably familiar with this, but it's the county and nonprofits partnering with local businesses to really recognize and promote these businesses that are going above and beyond in a green building way. And this is also a free program for recognition for your business. And they're tabling out back. And then finally, just lots of exciting things going on at the county. We recently awarded 2 Air District grants. Abby Young is in the room. Thank you for the money. One will be exploring opportunities to reduce embodied carbon in concrete. The other will be for rebates for homeowners to swap out their natural gas appliances for all electric appliances. So keep your eye out for these programs if you live in Marin. We're continuing to develop REACH codes and how we can make more stringent energy efficiency choices for new buildings in Marin County. We're always working with local governments to help them achieve energy savings and meet their 2020 climate action plan targets. And we are really reaching the beginning of Drawdown Marin. I think it launched a year ago, and we have a coordinator now, and they're in the hallway, and we're really hoping to engage local businesses in that effort. So, county is here to support you. If you have any questions, you can visit our website on the next slide, and we'd love to help you reduce energy use at your building. Thank you.
We ask that you actually hold questions if they're more in-depth questions until everyone's presented and we have some time for dialogue. If you have a burning question related to just a clarification of something she said, feel free to ask that. Otherwise, we'll move on to Ted. We're good? Okay, thank you.
You can start. Can I have the laptop? Oh, if it reaches, yes. You might have to switch seats. That's fine. My name is Ted Tiffany. I'm with Goodman & Blackwood Consulting Engineers. I'm the Director of Sustainability for our company. And we're mechanical, electrical, plumbing, telecom, but I run our building performance division and sustainability services. And I'm really kind of a codes and standards expert for the state of California and nationally for U.S. Green Building Council. I sit on their Energy and Atmosphere Technical Advisory Committee. So I get to deal with a lot of these big policy issues and kind of help shape policies that will get us more sustainable buildings, decarbonization paths and things like that. So I'm going to kind of give you the broad overview of what's happening and not too much technical terms. If you want to talk technical terms, I will talk your ear off for the next day or two and get into the weeds. But really, climate change is in our backyards, right? This is a picture of the fires over the hills in Santa Rosa, where I live. And, one of the imperatives that came out of our rebuild effort with Edminster and a lot of other really great like-minded green building experts, what came out of this was an electrification plan. An incentive plan that Sonoma Clean Power partnered with PG&E to develop an incentive program to go all electric. And it's an incentive of up to $17,500 to pay for heat pump technologies, domestic hot water heat pumps, solar, battery storage, induction stoves. And even more came out of that in the fact that Sonoma Clean Power is now renting out, or not even renting, but giving out induction stoves to people to learn about that technology. And they're getting like 90% adoption rates after people borrow those to go and put induction stoves in their homes. So they're kind of like changing hearts and minds. But it all came out of this, climate change tragedy. And that was one of the imperatives, is that we learn to do things better out of that. And, we're getting hit by these large disasters, and they're coming in different forms and coming quickly. I mean, this hurricane came up within a day to wipe out a major city, and we're up to, I think, 40 people lost their lives in this. But it's happening more and more. And in the imperatives that are coming out of this, I put this up as a joke, the scene from the day after tomorrow, but this is our reality. But the imperatives that came out of this for Florida and Texas are now rebuilding resilient homes, battery storage, and off-grid applications with solar. 250% increase in those packages of self-reliant solar systems. So we've got to take these climate change incidences and really make some changes. We've got to deal with our human-induced tragedies as well. We have these ongoing explosions with our natural gas supply system. This one was pretty interesting in the fact of how many fires there were and how distributed they were on the network. But this is something we knew was a challenge. The Environmental Defense Fund has been mapping major cities throughout the US and our methane leakage. And methane, depending on who you talk to, is 90 to 200% more impactful than CO2 in the atmosphere. If we have this level of leaks, and what they've done is like a Google car mapping of the city. So every one of these orange and red dots is a significant leak through a manhole in the city streets that's detectable. And this is an instantaneous reading, but if there's a leak in the natural gas supply, it's not stopping. Nobody's turning that off. It's a constant leak. So this one-time measurement is pretty impactful. But the city in red, they didn't map this. So as soon as I saw this map of Lawrence, where I tried to align it with the EDF map, but they hadn't mapped that area for the leaks to see if they coincided. But this is happening over and over in every city that we have, which have a natural gas supply system. So, this is our imperative to start getting ourselves off of natural gas. And EDF just started mapping the LA basin. So they were started in Pasadena, a couple of different cities of orange, and the same thing is popping up in every city they start mapping, that there's major leakage in the natural gas supply system. And not methane, and not just CO2 impactful, it's methane impacts of leakage. The leakages in the system is way more than we're being told by the utilities. So I want to say that electrified building design is achievable now. And I'm going to give you a few examples. This is a passive house-like design that we did at Jess Jackson's building. We actually designed out the HVAC, just ventilation is in this building. There's no active heating or cooling in this building because it maintains temperature using the environment. This is a 300,000 square foot SMUD operations quarter, completely zero net energy and all electric. So you can see the scale of things that we can do all electric and zero net energy. And I'll just highlight these. They're on different scales, different occupancies, and we just finished a master plan for 10 square meters, kilometer city in Guangzhou, all electric, zero net energy. So it can be done on the city scale with today's technology. This is not futuristic technologies. And I can go into the technologies if you want to talk about them later, but I'm not going to here. And we've commissioned a lot of these. They're in San Francisco, the Exploratorium, Lucille Peck Foundation. Those are all electric applications that can be done with today's technologies and are already working. Schools. We have a friend, Alice Sung, who's very dedicated to K through 12 schools, and these are learning centers. So we're starting to do these zero net energy schools that are learning centers that kids can learn from. We can understand the electrified technology and apply it to every building. And, the kids can go home and start talking to their parents about electrified applications.
And they can also be used as resilience centers.
Thank you for that. So to tie in the resiliency center, in the disaster that we had in Santa Rosa, almost every school district opened up their gyms for our resiliency centers, our community centers. So if we have these all electric, solar power, battery storage, off-grid ready, they become our resiliency centers where we have emergency power, and that's one of the things we're talking about. One of the things we're struggling with LEED right now, and even the state of California, is what we use to measure performance of our buildings. How efficient are they? And everybody's talking about going to greenhouse gas emissions as a measurement of performance. And we're struggling with that metric because as soon as we've reached our goal of getting 100% renewable power onto the grid, the GHG impact for that building is zero for the operational elements. And then you can lose efficiency in that metric, right? If we're getting 100% renewable power, why do we have to be efficient anymore? So we've got to have a measurement of efficiency still. And some of these metrics, like the site energy metric, source energy metric, it's not always a measurement of performance over time. Energy cost is not a kind of measurement, but is impactful to the business owners. And if we're talking about dynamic greenhouse gas emissions, where we are in California right now is we've got so much solar penetrating during the day that our greenhouse gas emissions, what we were traditionally thinking was on peak, noon to 6 period, are really low greenhouse gas emissions during the day now because we have that penetration of solar. So that ramping period in the afternoon is our highest impact of greenhouse gas emissions now. Kind of that 4 to 8 period where solar comes off. So we've really got to think about the time of energy use and the time of emissions readings. I won't go into this in too much detail, but the time and season of energy use is really starting to matter, especially in California. This profile changes. The dips in this are seasonal and in the middle of the day based on the hour and time step. So we can go into more, you can ask me all kinds of questions about this, I'll go into detail about it. But this changes based on where you are. So in Texas, where they have a huge amount of wind applications, this energy profile signature changes drastically. And I'll tell you some of the applications that we're looking at for that.
So that is the duck curve, right?
This is the proverbial 3D duck curve.
Wow.
So this is coming from Architecture 2030, and Ed Mazria and Charles Ely have been really hammering this. But I don't want to let operational carbon be your only thought pattern. It really matters the embodied carbon in the buildings that we construct. And Ann put it eloquently in our early morning meeting today, is any new construction that we build now is going to have that huge global warming impact right in construction that almost can dwarf the operational energy greenhouse gas emissions over the 30-year life of the building. And we also talked about the global warming impact of refrigerants. So we need to start accounting for all of that in the building life cycle. One of the things Ann and I are working on are the Building Decarbonization Coalition. And we've got a huge effort in public policy changes that we need to have, research on technologies, consumer education. All of these sectors need to come together, and we're doing that. We just had a heat pump summit with all the manufacturers, trying to get them to bring technologies to market that then we can develop markets for. So a lot of efforts there. And as we're electrifying, working on another application called the Grid Optimal Initiative with the New Buildings Institute. What does it mean to have a healthy, grid harmonized building on the electric grid? And finally, we're doing a lot of energy code education through Energy Code ACE, and it comes down to educating the marketplace, educating the contractors, homeowners, business owners, and getting those resources out there. So I'm going to end there, and thank you for your time, and we'll answer any questions after Ann's done hers.
Feel free to my hand. I just wanted to say, if you have any clarifying questions, feel free to ask right now, or we'll hold off. Okay, so we're going to hold off. We're going to switch up, and you are up next. I think we've got the right version. Ooh. Looks like you, right?
Looks like me, sort of. Good afternoon, Ann Edminster, Design Avenues. I just have to say, don't you love an engineer who's visually literate? Doesn't happen every day, folks. And our presentations are very complimentary, arguably repetitive, but these things do bear repeating, and I think in different voices. So I'll also add that I've had sort of parallel roles to Ted with the U.S. Green Building Council in the past, having a little more distance from that now. I've got to say, I'm really grateful for that. I led up the development of Lead for Homes for the U.S. Green Building Council from 2000 to 2006, and launched that program in California from 2006 to 2008. Also sat on the Materials and Resources Technical Advisory Group throughout that entire period. They eventually turned out a number of us who had been on so long, they had lost track of when our start dates were, but they said, you're out of here. So at the time I left off my U.S. Green Building Council work, my question to myself is, what's next? I'm always looking for the next bigger lever. I felt at that time that that next bigger lever was going to be zero net energy buildings. So that's what I turned my hand to. I wrote the first book on zero energy homes design and construction in 2009. So that's 9 years ago that was published. And that world has changed tremendously in these 9 years, I am happy to say. I'm actually rewriting the book, new edition. Look for that next year, because so much has changed, and in a wonderful way. And so in a sense, this presentation is foreshadowing what's in the book, the next attempt to really spread the word to many others. So here on we go. This project on the cover, by the way, is really a wonderful example of one of many examples of build projects, again, that are all electric, zero net energy. This particular one is called Arbor Green. It's in Carson, California, and developed by Affirmed Housing. So that is great. So here is the really exciting part. This is not just something that we need to do, must do, have to do. How many different ways can we say this? It's an incredible business opportunity that faces all of us. So we just have to be really smart about how to make that, really share the news that this isn't just a problem. It is also very, very exciting possibilities for all of us. So what I'm going to walk you through is really just a number of vignettes or snapshots that I see looking through my particular vantage point in this industry of what this landscape of change looks like right now and into the foreseeable future. So right now, what you see on the left is the growth in commercial zero energy buildings, and on the right, the growth in residential zero energy buildings, both of which really started out at about zero, give or take, in 2006. In fact, in late 2006, the very first zero energy home was verified to be operating as zero net energy. That one was built by the Metro Denver Habitat for Humanity chapter, or affiliate rather. And I don't have that part of the graph because nobody was tracking at that point. But you can see that both of these curves, the left from New Buildings Institute, which tracks the growth in commercial building, and on the right by the Net Zero Energy Coalition, tracking residential zero energy growth. By the way, I'm on their board. I've also worked with NBI. So I'm sort of telling you about myself through these pictures and my, again, lens on this, having been involved in many of these efforts. These are both demonstrating a growth curve that is really exponential. So although we still have tiny, tiny, tiny fractions of the overall building stock that is in this realm of performance, it is growing incredibly fast. Our building code also is heading in this direction. So California, as we all know, we're special here in California. We set trends for the rest of the country, and we love to, be special. So we'd had a big, bold energy goal that all new residential construction would be zero net energy by 2020. That's not going to happen, but we are making some major steps. So that's what this looks like for now. As Ted alluded to the meeting this morning, there's a really hotbed of work and debate and wrangling with specific metrics and strategies. How are we going to make this happen in the next code cycle or two, going from not just offsetting the so-called typical electric uses in a house that also has natural gas or propane, but really getting rid of all of those fossil fuel emissions associated with homes. And so what we see in this code cycle is we are making a major step forward. We're also starting to incentivize batteries to start to address the grid friendliness, if you will, and we're also increasing efficiency and saving consumers money in the process. Here's another really fun project I was involved with. There's way too much information here for me to walk you through all of it, but what this is really showing, you couldn't possibly see the teeny tiny type on the right-hand side, unfortunately. This was a project led by Itron, which is a larger consulting firm, and the goal of this project was to help the state of California, the California Energy Commission, decide how are we going to spend our $400 million of technology, research and development, deployment money over the next couple of years in service of the state's energy goals. So there are a number of lenses through which this can be looked at. Ted showed some of those lenses toward the end of his presentation. And the light blue box shows this is a tool that our team developed to allow the Energy Commission to evaluate what should those technologies be depending on which lens we look through. So we think this is an incredibly powerful tool to really inform the state's investment strategies. And not to give anything away, but if you download, this is well, anybody who wants the link, email me and I'll get it to you, because there really is a lot of very, very rich information here. See how much of this I can read on the top. Tiny, it's blurry too. Ew, I know batteries on the list, advanced heating and cooling. Anyway, it's fun. You should definitely look at it. And so this is an illustration of how this tool can be used. Some of the lenses in this particular one, what you're seeing in the overlap of these oblongs are, if we look at decision making through the lens of, are we most interested in achieving zero energy or zero carbon at the scale of the individual site, or at the scale of the community, through the all-electric or through mixed fuel lens, what answers do we get? And those answers change depending on which of those filters we apply. And so this is one particular snapshot. Yes?
These last two slides are extremely illuminating, so thank you.
Or they would be if you could read them.
As you talk us through them, it's very kind, because from here it's just a blur.
I know.
But it is that I wonder how much of this $400 million you said is going to be focused on net positive.
That's a great question, and I don't know. So the deliverable was given to the CEC back in May, and they are still passing it through their internal process to digest, filter, decide, make public. It's very suspenseful, although after 6 months, the suspense begins to fade. I think part of the challenge is we did give them so many different lenses to look through instead of saying, hey, here's your menu. So it remains to be seen. And I think, well, a couple things we say. This gentleman's told me I have 2 minutes, but I'm going to greatly overstep that, I fear. It's okay, good, excellent, thank you. What was I gonna say about that? Yeah, there's so many lenses to look through, and one of the big challenges, well, first, two big challenges. One is, part of this process was gathering stakeholder input. We did the largest survey ever done in the zero energy, larger energy efficiency community. We got over 550 responses. Many of the responses were qualitative, so the analysis was pretty hairy. But we set the stage for this analysis by asking some very overarching questions, including, what are the big challenges? And overwhelmingly, the responses were, technology is not the biggest challenge. Our biggest challenges are cultural and institutional. These are people issues. So that being said, we were charged with saying, how do we spend the state's money on technology? So, okay, we're gonna pull the lens in, we're gonna look at technology anyway. But again, the other big challenge is, there's not just one answer. It depends on what your metric is. And so we really are forcing the state through the results of this project to say, do we want to look at it through a strictly, quote, energy lens, or do we want to look at it through a carbon emissions lens? And at what scale? Again, individual or community scale buildings. And I think we all probably in this room, and certainly our entire project team, had a pretty good notion of what we thought the right answers were, and we're hoping that the CEC is starting to look through those same perspectives. So I'll carry on past my 0 mark per minute with all of your indulgence.
You're going net positive.
I'm going net positive, there you go. On the other side of the bar. So, and by the way, this is, I'm intentionally being punny here. The future is electrifying. That's absolutely exciting. Again, a couple of lenses, another project I was involved with for Southern California Edison, they have set a direction that is really a bellwether for the rest of the utilities and for the state as a whole. They've said, you know, all your state programs are great, but we as utilities see that the future is decarbonized. So we're just going to forge ahead with that and state, we're going to ask you to follow our lead and develop programs in that model. So you can see, again, there's a lot of fine print here, but I've circled the big things where they're saying, aha, we are really going towards electric solutions. So this is not just our wishful thinking or belief that this is necessary. We're also seeing some of the major forces at play reinforcing this direction. And Ted already alluded to the Sonoma Clean Power, or the Collaborative Bay Area Air Quality Management District, thank you Abby, Sonoma Clean Power and PG&E collaboration that resulted in this very handsome incentive package. Again, orange pointing out the strong emphasis on electric components. And note that PG&E, which is a gas and electric utility, is also playing here. I think that's a very important factor. So, and not coincidentally, oops, this got kind of haywire, that program is being used as a model for REACH codes for local jurisdictions. So that's, I hate it when this happens. Anyway, at the same time, there are local groups in Sonoma County, 350 Sonoma, and a group that is so new it doesn't yet have a logo and not incorporated Friends of the Climate Action Plan up there, have collaborated to really lobby the local government officials to say, look, we really do need to stop extending the natural gas infrastructure, and the baby step is, can we have all new projects, all electric ready as a minimum? And that's kind of what this looks like. By the way, the picture of the induction cooktop here is a signal. Again, this is a people, a cultural problem. It is not a technical problem. Induction cooking is hands down superior to anything our grandmothers, mothers, or selves perhaps have cooked with in the past. I think we have to stop calling it electric cooking, because then people go, oh, I couldn't possibly cook on an electric stove. They're just horrible. Let's refer to it by the technology at the heart, which is magnetism. So people say it's electric, well sure, but your gas stove also plugs in. So it's really not about that. It's a new technology that's vastly superior. Embodied carbon, Ted mentioned this also. This is the forgotten stepchild of the carbon equation. This is a snapshot. All these materials and processes have a carbon footprint. In the overall lifespan of a building, that carbon footprint, the embodied carbon portion of the footprint, really dominates the overall carbon profile for the first 10 to 15 years, perhaps more, of the building's overall life cycle. Well, when we have 10, 12, maybe years to really pull back the climate change engine, we need to be very, very concerned with that time frame. This is why the Bay Area Air Quality Management District's Marin project to reduce the embodied carbon in concrete is tremendously important. So we really need to be looking through that lens. Let's just stop building new buildings to the extent we can, focus our resources and energies in the existing building stock. Very conveniently, most of construction in Marin, being a developed area, is retrofit, rehabilitation, and so forth. So that's where our energy needs to go. This is a really exciting project. This is Karen Timberlake's own headquarters, and they did a very detailed study of this that shows that the potential to reduce embodied carbon and a whole host of other impacts by building reuse, by the way, while getting it to net positive operating energy, is tremendous. So each of these pairs of bars represents a different impact, and at a minimum, you see they've reduced the impact to 47% as compared to new construction. And the far bar on the right represents mass, which pretty much tracks embodied carbon. That's 11% as compared to new construction. This is dramatic, folks, and it's really telling us what to do. So there are great solutions for tackling existing building problems. Energy Sprung in the Netherlands has figured out how to do this by aggregating demand so we can mobilize industrial scale responses. They've also packaged in the financing to remove that as an obstacle. They've gotten policy obstacles out of the way, and they've figured out to make the solutions appealing, not just from a climate perspective or from a dollar perspective, but about what people want in their homes: improved comfort, performance, and modernity, frankly, all together in one package. And we have that program being adapted and replicated in 5 different countries now, and including 2 programs in the US. Very exciting. And finally, at the largest scale, not just aggregating the demand of individual buildings, but looking at what do we do within our communities. Ted also alluded to this, looking at how do we make our individual districts and neighborhoods islandable so that they do become more resilient in our increasingly frequent emergency situations. And that means the buildings within these areas need to be extremely efficient and grid adapted and connected in such a way as to function best. So, path forward, 4 big points: existing building focus, community scale focus, get rid of the gas infrastructure, and investing in the key technologies. And I should have added dealing with the people side of the equation. Thank you for your indulgence.
Thank you very much. That was great. So initially we were going to go right into small groups, but the presentations are so rich and so varied, it might make some sense now to actually ask questions, and then we'll break into groups. So with that said, I've got a couple of questions too, but I'm going to trust the intelligence of the group here, and just feel free to ask. We'll go Abby, and then back there's Mark, and then Chris.
So great presentations, and I liked, Anne, the slides that you did on the existing building stock. I heard a statistic that 80% of the buildings that are going to be around in 2050 have already been built. So that's really, that's the hardest piece of this, is how do we get fossil fuels out of existing buildings. And then Ted, you talked about there's a lot of public policy changes we need. So can any of you speak to what types of public policy changes or initiatives or whatever are needed to get at that decarbonization of the existing building stock, besides funding?
I think one, we were arguing this morning with PG&E in the room and some of the other regulators, were the challenge of the natural gas supply system. If we electrify, say, 90% of the homes in a neighborhood, the last 10% are going to be stuck with really high gas prices and infrastructure that PG&E needs to maintain. It's called a stranded asset. So what we've seen in a policy application in the Netherlands is to decarbonize an entire neighborhood and incentivize everybody to go all electric. That way they can shut that branch off. There's policy obstacles to doing that at the CPUC level that need to change. There's no money to do it. So we have to ask ourselves as a society whether we pay like we do. Every ratepayer pays a fraction of a penny to decommission our nuclear power systems. Do we as a society now pay in, create a financial application for PG&E, Southern California Gas, to get off natural gas and, pay for those stranded assets? I say the answer is yes. We need to find a mechanism to do that, a policy application to do that, and remove the barriers in CPUC policy to do that right now as well.
Isn't there something of an advantage in terms of moving off of natural gas? If you have a stranded asset, doesn't it kind of motivate that homeowner? Like, look, my gas bill is going higher and higher and higher because people are moving off of gas. So, now I'm the only one in my neighborhood and I'm paying, ridiculous amounts.
There's 2 components to that. Yes, you're going to have higher gas prices. That's going to be an economic disincentive for you. But it also has the social equity challenge of the least able people to do that in the neighborhood, to make that conversion, may get stranded with that higher gas prices. And there's a social equity component to that.
Yeah, I think we're also going to see an interesting interplay between sort of the forces of policy, legislation, and the market, because as this direction becomes more apparent and inevitable, I think the market will respond, and I also think that the public sector is going to respond to sort of address the socially disadvantaged folks who really have to have support in making the transition. But this is where I think the Netherlands example is really powerful, because they said, look, we can't actually make this all happen unless we solve all these problems together. The appeal, the financial piece, the regulatory piece, and the supply piece. So we have to look at those in an integrated way and address them together.
I think it was, is it Mark? Yeah.
Question about the Marin Energy Watch. Aren't there metrics for the success of that program? The reason I ask is that Sustainable Economic House was involved with the East Bay Energy Watch, and I've asked several times, it's great, you go out there and meet with the business owners. Who followed through? How much energy was saved? How many projects were initiated? Do you guys have that information?
So we report as part of our, contract with PG&E on the modeled savings of the project. So you had this many lights that were using this many kilowatt hours, and then we're swapping those out for all these LED lights that we'll assume will use this many.
So you track back from that initial contact with the business to the follow-through response.
So from like a baseline energy use to the post-install modeled energy use.
Okay, so you took it end to end. 'Cause I don't think our program on that side did that.
Mm-hmm.
We made the contact, and then if they followed through, we didn't know them. And you tracked it all the way through.
Yeah, I'm fairly certain that's the way it's done, because we do have to, we have targets for how many kilowatt hours and therms we'll save through our program every year. So that is something we have to report. But I will say that energy tracking and just in general follow through on those things are something that we can always do better at, and something that we're continually working on.
So I think Bob was next, and then there and there, yeah. And then we'll go break into groups so we can still have time for discussion.
So I'm interested on the incentives to go all electric that are out there. The 17,500 that applied only to Santa Rosa, is that right?
Yeah, that's only for the fire rebuilds.
Okay. So currently there is no incentive program for either an existing, let's say, commercial or residential owner to either build all electric or convert to all electric?
So every municipal utility and CCA out there right now is looking at a modeled program like SMUD has right now, which is a retrofit program about $5,000 to convert natural gas appliances, furnaces, and hot water heaters over to electric appliances, heat that technology.
Sacramento Municipal Utility District?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and I will specifically say that the munis, the municipal utilities, and the CCAs have the ability to do that. The major IOUs have an issue at CPUC level called the three-prong test. I won't get into details, but it's preventative on fuel switching. It's preventative. It's preventing incentivizing a fuel switching measure.
And what about rate structure? So right now, we've got these tiered rate structures in both electric and gas, right? So you pay less by having both, effectively, because you get a chunk of each. You switch to all electric, now you're cranking up into your tier 3 or tier 4 power, right?
Thank you for pointing that out. There's one thing we're working with the CPUC right now. It's called beneficial electrified rate structures. And it deals with the time of use as well, because as of January 2019, most residential rate customers are going to move to the time of use rate that is between 4 and 8 penalties, or 3 and 8 penalties, where solar is not going to be beneficial.
Right.
So it really challenges an all-electric building. So we're trying to break down that barrier right now through the Building Decarbonization Coalition, and NRDC is working on that. A lot of people are interested in fixing that issue right now.
Great.
I just want to pitch two of Marin County programs real quick when we talk about fuel switching. So for residential programs, yes, we got a generous grant from the Air District recently, and the Board of Supervisors has also dedicated $150,000. So we actually will be having a residential natural gas to all electric appliance swap out program starting next year. So residents in every city in Marin County can say, I have old gas stove or a gas water heater or a gas furnace, and I'd like to switch that out for a heat pump or an induction cooktop. The rebates aren't going to cover the whole project cost, but we're hoping that it'll be a catalyst to help people sort of retrofit, especially because we have so many existing buildings. And on the new building front, this is sort of for commercial and residential buildings. The County of Marin has a REACH code where we require additional energy efficiency savings for new buildings beyond what the state requires. In our latest REACH code that the Board of Supervisors adopted in the spring, we included pathways for less stringent energy efficiency for buildings that are all electric, and that's addressing some of these existing state barriers. But we've seen some adoption of those options, and so functionally you can either build a home with natural gas that's 15% or 20% more efficient than the state code, or you can build an all-electric building and build it at the state level of efficiency. So those are some of the ways we're trying to work around all the existing state infrastructure.
So you're next.
I understood that if you do 3 upgrades with PG&E, there are incentives.
So there's a California Advanced Home Incentive and Retrofit program available. It's a very, very small incentive. And what the Sonoma Clean Power Bay Area Management District compiled on top of that was additional enhancements to that incentive program. So you'll see.
Only for rebuilds?
Only for rebuilds right now, but it's becoming a model for their retrofit ready program. And we're in a room with almost every CCA and local jurisdiction in the last week talking just about how to develop a program for this fuel conversion. That's a package and or individually, or what we call a decarbonization plan. Can I, Ed asked a question and he left about net positive buildings, and I heard you kind of cheer about net positive buildings, and I want to address one thing. If we're a net positive building, it becomes a very challenging thing for the utilities to manage when we're exporting energy in the time of use, and especially for a CCA. We need to rethink that notion of what is a net positive or a net benefit zero net energy home. Because the time of use, if you're exporting all that energy onto the grid, it's very disruptive. So I have a challenge with the net positive buildings right now.
So that's a great point, very good point. And in the next session, we're actually going to talk about ways to do net positive so it actually works for the building of the homeowner. And that
Net beneficial.
Yeah, net beneficial and net positive.
But I want to point out that given the state's energy goals call for a huge amount of additional clean energy generation, that is something that will be resolved not just at the individual building level, but at a much larger scale. So don't want to discourage anybody from doing solar who should. It'll get figured out.
I don't want to sell it at a loss there.
Okay, so you had your hand up to ask a question.
Yes, I have a question. I have a question about the grid and a couple of things that come into that. One, I spent my first period of time in California, I spent living above Nepenthe in Big Sur. And there was a huge high-intensity electrical grid going through there, and most of the people there got cancer. I'm wondering, we're talking about islandable, we're talking about local grids, are we talking about, so we're talking about several different things on scale. I'm thinking about we need a new grid, right, system, and that's what you were talking about. Also, we need to address whether we're going to put it underground or above ground, or what's the grid going to look like, how's it going to be broken down, and does anybody have a model for that yet? A grid system that's going to take into account all of these wonderful ideas. And bring them to the sense of our goal is to make each community an islandable goal, so we have bringing everything more local. Our decisions are more local, our funding is more local, and our grid is more local, so that if something happens, we will be able to kick in place hopefully
I can address that to a degree, which is please come to session B because there'll be much more explicit conversation about that, that whole set of topics you just brought up that are all interrelated about localization.
The scale of
exactly right.
everything.
Yeah, exactly right. And, but feel free to comment if you want.
Yeah, the idea of microgrids are going to...
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I had a second question, but go ahead.
The idea of microgrids for resiliency is going to be embedded into our new grid architecture. New York has done a lot of applications like that. I know there's an effort out in the National Parks Service and Point Reyes to get rid of the transmission distribution lines that go through the national park, and that would require a microgrid application to service Point Reyes and the connected assets down there. Kind of a wilderness application.
Yes.
But that would create a microgrid application for that side of the mountainside. So you're going to see more of that, but it takes an evolution of planning to make that happen. We're talking 10, 20-year scales of having that application down to, say, a neighborhood microgrid application.
Because the other side of that is you have to train people to actually build and work within that
Correct.
system. And so that was my second question. Who,
Can I just,
what-
sorry, can I
Okay,
just
go ahead.
cut you? I would love this, if we can save your question till after we do a little discussion and come back to it. I just want
Okay.
to make sure we have enough time. I'm sorry, but I just wanted to have just the one question. So hopefully we'll have time. What I'd like to do now is just shift gears, if we could, to break into smaller groups of 5 or 6 people.